Hi Mary, welcome to Let Your Voices Speak. We're really excited to have you here.
Thank you, Ben. It's great to be back. Campus always looks beautiful, and it's exciting to look at all the things that have changed.
What made your experience at SSFS unique?
I loved the interaction with faculty, and in particular, Ben Bose, who taught English, Charlie Fisher, who taught history, and Margot and Thorny Brown, and Barry Morley, and Peter Fletcher. And I found that there were courses that were phenomenal, and I think about them to this day. For example, an anatomy course in which we actually were able, in the 70s, to go to see open heart surgery at Bethesda Naval Hospital. And that brought everything to life in a way that was unbelievable, and it really made a kind of rich foundation for the way in which we were learning. And in Ben Bose's course, we did a dance marathon, and it was on the 1920s, and I signed up last minute, and I was in it for 22 out of 24 hours, and the only reason I couldn't stay for the whole 24 hours is because there were no men left. So there were a lot of experiences like that weren't only in the classroom, and they weren't only at a faculty member's home. They were out in the field where you have memories that don't ever go away because they're part of your experience, and they kind of become part of your DNA.
In your 2016 Ignite presentation, you mentioned that in 1972, before making the decision to move to Lebanon with the rest of your family, your mother wrote to every friend's boarding school on the East Coast in search of space and scholarship opportunities. What was it that was so attractive about a friend's education to you and your family?
It's a great question, and when I was giving the Ignite speech, I almost shed a tear during that part because it was a very poignant time for my family, as you can imagine. They were going into war-torn Civil War Beirut with a diplomatic corps, and my mother's aunt had a good friend who had gone to George School. And it was right after World War II and Nazi occupation. And so the friend had been a legend in our family, and George School became a legend. And it wasn't about the school, it was about the values. And it was the fact that my mother's aunt's friend was someone who was always learning and always contributing and really had a very rich life. So when I was faced with the fact that there was a choice and the opportunities began to come in, it was Sandy Spring and Sidwell and Oak Grove, Coburn, and a lot of others. And I sat down in an interview with Thorny Brown, and Thorny said, I want to give you 2/3 scholarship if you will tell the other schools that you're going to come here. And that made all the difference. And the values have been a significant part of not only that moment of choice, but in how I've kind of lived the rest of my life.
So what type of student were you, and what sorts of activities did you take part in? Sports, arts, theater?
Yeah, I was actually a dance major, and my first meeting when I came to campus was right here in this house. There was a big table in this room, a huge wooden carved dining room table, and we were brought in for admission. This was, I think, where the Fishers lived at one point. And Sally Fisher said, you know what, I think you are someone who would really get a lot out of dance, because Liz Lerman was the key person at that time. And I ended up being very active in Tai Chi, in modern dance, in folk dance, and every other form of expression of dance you can imagine. And it didn't mean we didn't have everything else that we needed to do, but dance was kind of the signature piece for me.
So as a student, how do you feel that you impacted the SSFS community, and how did the SSFS community impact you?
You know, that's a wonderful question. When we, as a new class, and particularly boarding students, were brought in, we were in Clifton Barn, and we had an a town hall meeting. And Thorny Brown, in his inimitable way, looked everyone in the eye and said, particularly as boarding students, you're going to have more freedom than you've ever had in your life. And then he paused for what seemed like a half an hour. And he said, and you're going to have more responsibility to make good choices. And then he was quiet. I found that to be one of the most profound things that I could live by, in terms of looking at the fact that there was all this latitude for making a lot of different kinds of choices for how I would spend time and how I would do what I was supposed to be doing here. And also, feeling grateful for the scholarship and the opportunities. But I also felt a lot of responsibility to try to get it right. And this was during a time in the 70s where not everybody thought that way. And, not that it was bad or good, but there was a lot more latitude. And I stayed closer to kind of midline rather than going to the fringes of anything. And I took the opportunities pretty seriously. And I think I kind of let my choices and my life speak for themselves in that way. And I guess the other part of that question of the community on me, or the other way around, just people lived the tenets of Quakerism in a very special way. And there was such an amazing kind of listening and invitation to speak and to think clearly, and you weren't judged. It didn't mean that there wasn't discernment about what was really worth following up with and what wasn't, but you weren't judged, and so there was a kind of active engagement on the part of each faculty member and each administrator in how they lived the community values and how they treated students and how they listened really carefully. And so you never felt like somebody wasn't watching or listening, and that you really had to show that you would know how to think well and communicate well and make good choices.
So what was something that SSFS taught you that you still carry with you, either professionally or personally?
There's a kind of continuing revelation that is talked about at Sandy Spring and in Quakerism. And for me, what that means is mine for the gold and realize that you never see everything in front of you. You see a fraction of what somebody might represent. So for example, I work with executives and I work with members of boards, and everyone is pretty confident and pretty equipped and very talented and very credentialed. And when they're behind closed doors, they often have fears about having their voice be clear and having the value that they want and the impact they want to have it be straightforward and really effective. And when I think about that lens through which I want to always be able to look of continuing revelation, for me it means keep looking, keep asking, keep mining for what the authentic voice might be that will translate into value, not just for an individual, but for an entire organization. And don't let people get away with nonsense, but create conditions that will allow them to feel like the best of who they are can come out.
Can you describe what you do professionally and explain how your experience at Sandy Spring may have had an impact on your career? How does the SSFS philosophy relate to what you do on a daily basis in your profession?
Yeah. I have a really strong code of ethical conduct, and so when I have clients, they don't leave. I am really honored to be able to work with incredibly smart, talented, powerful individuals, and to do it not for a year or two, which is common for the kind of business that I'm in, but for 13 years. And these are people who, get their PhDs from Nobel laureates. And I'm on the phone with them once or twice a week to help them figure out how to best navigate with a kind of ethical code and very intelligent strategy. And so I look at what it means to bear witness for people who entrust me with their professional development as leaders in corporations and not-for-profits and for government. And I take that really seriously. And right now I'm working with a very exciting organization, and they're some of the best in their field. And the trust that I'm given has everything to do with the kind of strength of commitment that was kind of inbred while I was here.
In your 2015 Ignite presentation, you talked about finding your voice. How do you think SSFS teaches students to find their voices?
Everybody's different, and everybody has a voice that comes to a different decibel level at different times and in different circumstances, depending on the kind of environment that they're in and the kind of pressure they might put themselves under. And I think what people at Sandy Spring do is give permission to have people quiet all the extraneous noise when you really need to do that. And the practice comes in, of course, during meeting for worship. It also can come in classes, and it can come in athletics as well. Finding your voice is actually a lifelong journey. It isn't something that, one day it's here and you know it and you amplify and it keeps working for you in the same way. It iterates and really makes for a very different kind of experience as you go through different kinds of stages in your life. And I think what Sandy Spring, in its essence in the community, does is it says it's okay. There's a permission granted to really look for an authentic way of representing yourself in the world, not just with ego and moniker or a kind of epaulet or brand, but a kind of genuine track where you can look back after 5, 10, 15, 20 years, however many years, and you can say, I like an airplane that goes from point A to point B. It's not a straight line. It's very much of an approximate route. You can look back and you can say, I think this person, I think Barry Morley, or I think Ben Bowes, or I think Thorny Brown really listened at a time when I wasn't so confident, and they found a kernel or a gem or some kind of quickening that gave me enough of the experience of having my voice have an impact, and therefore I can take that leap or I can take that risk, and I can keep doing that. So it's a frame of reference that's built in, and it's relevant for the rest of your life.